It's another Manly Monday, and this was not what I was originally going to talk about this week, but then the whole Supreme Court thing happened, and um, things went insane. And so I thought I'd make this video, not to give my opinions on things, but to talk about how to talk about it. Um, because I was reading some articles, and you may have seen them, which is why I decided to do this. That men need to get involved, men need to speak up, and yet, in a lot of circles, it's shut up, you don't get to have an opinion, right? And one person even directed me to tweets suggesting that pro-choice men get vasectomies. I admit I don't understand the thinking there, but I'm just putting it out there. I am aware. Okay, I am not aware of a lot of culture war stuff that happens on the internet. People think I'm more aware than I am. I am aware about that. So if you like me, at least making the attempt, albeit flawed, albeit personal, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it and can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Some people have taken their Leanna Care sessions to talk about this. If you need someone to talk to, link to sign up is in the description box below. Usually when I talk about topics, when I talk about video games or when I talk about some, philosophical definition, point, I tend to say this isn't that important. It's not worth getting worked up all over. This is just, essentially a curiosity. But the thing that makes it so hard to talk about the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade and the issue of abortion in general is this is a topic that the understandable response is an incredibly emotional one. This is an emotionally charged topic, right, Cthulhu? Right. And I wanna validate that because it's gonna make this different. It's gonna make it different than a lot of the things I talk about. The approach I take is gonna be very different, precisely because I don't think it's possible to even think about this issue without feeling a lot. No matter where you come down on the whole thing, right? I put up on Twitter that, there is absolutely no way the left can come up with an emotional talking point that's going to overcome baby murder, right? It's just, that's just the worst thing a lot of people can think of, right? And so, but on the other side, you are talking about, before y'all freak out, you are talking not just about a person's bodily autonomy. There are a lot of other things going on with this one. Women's Jewish groups are pissed right off because, for everybody but the Orthodox, abortion is permitted, certainly up to a certain time. And so understandably, there is a sensitivity to freedom of religion, and the idea that Christian doctrine is being forced on people who are not Christian. And I'm sure atheists are probably nodding their heads too, right? More liberal Muslims also say abortion is required in certain circumstances up to 120 days. Now, how people back then counted 120 days. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not Muslim. But you know, these are charged. These are charged topics, right? You get into the idea of being a parent and, you know, the role of men in this stuff, and the we don't, you know, we aren't great at accepting and understanding when men express complicated feelings to begin with, and so when we, you know, get into here, it gets even messier. And that's what makes this so difficult. Is ever some people's facts may be wrong, but everyone's feelings are completely valid here. I had a really great chat with someone who grew up in a very, very religious background over the weekend, and you know, they're ambivalent about this, and everything's scary for a lot of people. So, you know, that's me validating. On top of all of this, the way we talk to each other about things that are seen as political or partisan fights is terrible for emotionally charged topics. Remember that stuff I talked about last week about fighting virtues and how that performative, you know, aggression, you have to be emotionless and aggressive at the same time. I feel nothing, but right? Stupid. But that came in to protest language, and all talking points now are that language. And it doesn't go well when you try to have conversations about this stuff if you're in that paradigm, if you're in the fighting virtues paradigm, because this requires for everyone. But you know, men are in a unique position here because of the sensitivities, because it's seen as a women's issue. And the historical mixed messaging. And I want to start there. I want to, in my opinion, feminist messaging, feminist circles, there is no one big group where all feminists meet, right? There's no membership card. But the discourse, feminist debate on this has completely fucked this up. And that's part of the problem. The rhetoric's confusing. There's a lot of very loud, very strident, you know, this is the way messaging. Stay out, you better fight, do this, do that, right? And you can't please everyone. And then it's further complicated now by, you know, the inclusion of trans men. And some people are immediately gonna hit the comments, angry typing. Leanna mentioned trans men. Trans men exist, guys. Trans men are men. They might not be the same kind of men as you, if that's your opinion, but they are men. And fun fact, some trans men are not out about their status. And so they're in the same boat in the, you know, shut up, man, on certain discussions, and yet they need medical care. And that's really awkward when, you know, in places like the US where you don't have a functional system like Canada where you just go to the doctor and it's private and everybody's sitting, you know, in the same place. with things like, Planned Parenthood being a primary healthcare provider for so many people, it is. I admit I was a bit of an asshole about this whole thing at first when I heard the whole thing about pregnant people, and I rolled my eyes and was like, "Oh, come on, rah, tiny percentage, right?" I said over the weekend that the term is growing on me. And it's not because of a trans agenda or trans ideology. No, it's because there is a very real reality that to some people, the minute someone becomes pregnant, they become the carrier of a person more than a person themselves, right? There are far too many people who believe that the life that matters is, the 3-week-old fetus. No, I mean, a lot of people don't know they're pregnant at that point, but the thing that can't live on its own is more important than the person with cognition. And that is the reason a lot of people get so emotional about this, and why chastising someone for an emotional response, you're being emotional, like criticizing them or looking down on them for having an emotional response here is the wrong thing to do. And I very rarely put a moral spin on these sort of things. Tactical error, yes, but in this case, it's actually wrong. And it doesn't matter who it is, because again, if people feel very strongly that a fetus is a baby, and for the record, I don't, up until it, up until cognition at 24 weeks. But, that's besides the point. I say that only to say, people who believe differently than I do believe it sincerely, and they believe that is a defenseless, innocent person who needs protection. And that's valid. That's what makes it so hard, because then, people who are in a position that they may become pregnant through not great circumstances, through abuse or coercion, go, why aren't I a person anymore? We are touching on the idea of personhood here, and who matters and who doesn't. And so if you get a strong reaction, stop. And people really appreciate in this somebody seeming to give a damn about their perspective. I actually had people who are pro-life thank me on Twitter for pointing out that their views are sincere, and you can't emotionally overpower that view, right? And these are people that think I'm a baby murderer, right? Not that I've, not that I have had an abortion, but I am pro-choice. So, those little moments of humanity. It's not civility. It's humanity. They matter a lot. Personally, I think this is stuff, in a perfect world, in an ideal world, we would do all the time. We would validate the feelings of the person we're talking to as a strong foundation for different views, right? It's a meeting ground that's solid. So when you get in there's an element of trust. And that trust gets very shaky on this subject because someone says something, doesn't realize why they've hit an emotional button, has a reaction, right? Especially if it's a person that isn't as in touch with their feelings or has trouble reading social cues. One poor person I like very much kept getting into trouble on Twitter, and I was trying to go easy because I know they're on the spectrum, and I just felt terrible about it because they're on the spectrum, and so they were, especially in text, reading nuance, reading cues is so difficult. And it's very difficult for people who are more logical, the thinkers instead of the feelers, to know how to navigate this language. And I say that as a thinker who had to learn to be more of a feeler because I read the research and it's like, oh, factoring in emotions leads to better decision making. Okay, so I'm gonna learn feelings to be more logical, right? If somebody gives you a very strong reaction, just let them. Do your best to not take it personally because it is personal, but it's deeply personal for everyone involved, right? Like I said, everybody's having such a strong reaction here. Harsh things are going to be said. Heated rhetoric's going to happen. If you can, just let people express their feelings. You don't have to, you don't have to agree with them internally, but let them talk, right? Validating someone and agreeing with them aren't the same thing at all. It was interesting because there were 3 Canadians like me. I was one of them on Twitter, and we were talking about this, and we had a really good discussion about, well, I think this, well, I think this, well, I think this, and we all didn't agree, and we were having all these thought experiments, but, because we're not at each other's throats on the regular about this up here, there could be a discussion. Because we were all like, I see where you're coming from. I don't see it the same way. Like we had this whole, it was interesting, and everybody's position made sense. Nobody had the same position. That's a really good conversation, right? So getting to the TLDR, okay? And this is kind of backward, but I really wanted to talk about that emotional component because this will not work unless you have the emotional component. No guarantee it will work anyways. Some people feel very strongly about this. But if somebody says men can't have an opinion on this, men aren't allowed to have an opinion on this, that's just not possible, right? I didn't talk about men's issues on this channel for years and years and years because I'm like, not my business. It was by request I finally started doing it. That didn't mean I didn't have an opinion on subjects. It just means I didn't speak with any authority, right? Not a man. No one can stop you from having a thought in your mind, right? What is reasonable to ask is that, for anybody who has never had to think about what they would do if they became pregnant, your opinions and the way you express those opinions should be informed by that. And by that, I mean, these are decisions you will never have to directly make. You will never be responsible for. This isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I see it as similar to, military service, which is, primarily overwhelmingly male. And we are losing the understanding that it's not okay to ask a veteran if they ever killed anybody in combat. If they want to tell you, okay, but that's not right to ask because you're putting them on the spot. You have never been in that position. You don't understand the ground truths, the field truths that they went through. And so it's a very uncomfortable spot. That's sort of the point of empathy I can give. And some people are like, yeah, but people don't do that anymore. Yeah, it's wrong. We should be more considerate about stuff like that, which is why we need to talk about it so people know. I'm old enough that there were, Korean War veterans. My stepfather was a Korean War veteran. And so we were raised to handle these things a certain way. And I really do think that as terrible as the wars were, I think that the compassion that stuff like that makes us have, the sensitivity, we're losing it, and it was good. I was hoping the whole COVID thing would bring that back. It hasn't yet. Maybe there's still time. But yeah, if you have no frame of reference for an experience, off the top, I was like, I don't know. I'm not Muslim. Same, right? That doesn't mean I've never been in a mosque. That doesn't mean I don't know anything about Islam. That doesn't mean I don't know how to buy halal meat. Just I don't know what that experience is like from the inside. Right? It's the same. When you wade into a discussion that is and this is where I'm very careful, because I think this is the thing that goes the other way, that men who really, really want to be fathers and understand that, that's an indirect process. This is a sensitive thing for them too. And I think because the emotional reactions for women, mostly women, because the emotional reactions are so overwhelming, that gets a little lost. And this is why I think it is very, very important to talk about this stuff. This is why I think these sorts of, I always feel weird going like, I am a representative of women, because I do not consider myself that at all. I am not typical of women. One of the conversations I had when, the woman I was talking to is very sex typical. She has female brain. She has female perspective. And, I said, she was saying things that are very, very different from where I come at things. And I'm like, I listen when you tell me about this experience, because, it's not mine. This is what, this is what being a real girl is like, okay, cool. That matters. I used to be an asshole about it because I didn't understand it as much. It's like, oh, well, that's just, that's just conforming and that's just construction. And no, they can't help it any more than I can, right? I mean, this is not normal. My whole thing here, it's cool, it's awesome, but most people do not have a plush Cthulhu they talk to about things, right? Cthulhu, right? Um, but that's really all you can do. If this is a sensitive thing for you, and I know there's this sensitivity about not being able to speak, to say your piece. I understand there's a frustration there. Try to understand that everyone is feeling that to an extent on this stuff. Everyone is walking around afraid to say the wrong thing and get their head bitten off. Except me. Because I getting canceled 3 times. I get people don't understand this, and I get misunderstood all the time because of this. Like, you get eventually so tired of being afraid and so tired of feeling stifled that eventually you just, you take the hits and you get bombarded and you get bombarded and you get bombarded. And, it's like toughening up your knuckles in martial arts. Eventually, like, yeah, it hurts, but you don't feel it the same way anymore. It's like, well, what can they do? Cancel me again? 4th time's a charm, Maybe you'll end up in Hufflepuff this time instead of Slytherin 3 times. But that's not invalidating the fear that people have. That's just me explaining why I can sometimes seem out of touch with that fear. And I don't want to say, well, I don't like the whole strength thing. I don't like it's made me stronger and I'm more evolved and, it sounds like a fucking Pokemon. I don't think it's about that at all. I think everybody has a meaningful experience. Everybody's experience can inform something. And, we can clash sometimes. We can rub each other the wrong way. Things can sting. That can be good. My best friends in the whole world, we talk about really tough stuff. I mean, you should see the conversations Mary Jest and I have. We'll be game designing. Next thing you know, we're talking about something, and we disagree. And it's, great friends. It's not about never fighting. It's not about agreeing 100% on things. It's about knowing how to disagree and always remembering that the other person's coming at something from a good place. This is not somebody out to get you. This is someone who just, something's happening today. And it's very, very, very important that if you want to maintain the conversation, if you want to maintain the communication, that you actively, you actively validate, you actively give respect, and you actively give little indicators of sincere appreciation that this is hard to talk about. Sometimes it is going to spill over. Sometimes it is going to clash. I have a few pro-lifers I talk to fairly regularly. I actually said to one of them on the day the judgment came down, he contacted me about something else, but I said to him, look, I'm sure you're having a happy and blessed day. I don't want to ruin that for you right now. Because if I started even trying, I was just going to be, rah, and that's not right. He's not on the Supreme Court. He's entitled to his opinion. He's not, okay, he votes. He's actually American. I'm not. But that's what you do. It isn't like we haven't, butted heads on things in the past. But I learned from those butting of heads, there are certain views. I have no idea how someone can hold them. And yet, I do believe, because this guy is a very, very kind, legitimately caring person. At first I thought it was bullshit, but it's not. He's actually like a very sweet person. And so, I don't understand why he thinks some of the things he does. But there are too few people in this world that we can say with relative certainty don't want to hurt people and do mean well. That I do think that if you meet a person like that you do feel like you can trust, and they don't, there aren't red flags, that you establish that rapport, a single issue isn't worth never speaking to them again. And again, that's based on behavior, not opinions. So keep that in mind both ways, right? Hopefully you found this helpful, even though it was, like I said, really vague and no guarantees here. People are going to blow on this one. It's just a raw wound for everybody. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. Let's see if YouTube demonetizes this for being a controversial subject, right? Or you can buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it, who can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching.